Well, we're going to start off Promise. I promise not to make too many jokes. But I will. So, start off with I'm Dex. I'm like the serial killer and the boy genius, if you want to go with that. I recently just started a job as a web developer. I'm going to keep it like this because I don't feel like spending the time trying to get it up in full screen. I'm a web developer at American First Credit Union. I just started up there. If you're having any problems, I swear we're working on it. I'm not involved with that. And I just actually filled the last position, so congrats for me. I also am a TA down at the University of Utah boot camp. They have a great program. I help with them. I think there should be another cohort here starting soon, but we have them starting all the time. And this is where I was when I said I was busy. I was going to insert a nerd joke about JavaScript, you know, being funny. But going on from there, here's why you should listen to me. I basically tried to be a self-taught developer, and then I had a boot camp. I want to thank Sean for that. He was actually my instructor. I didn't listen to what he said about promise when he said promises were important. Drew also said that promises were important, so I had to relearn them on the job. It came down to a lot of media, pulling media sources from my computer. Basically had to use them. We were having a camera come take pictures for the app that I was building. It was in a framework, nothing worked the way that I wanted it to, so I had to go through promises. Really do actually love me some Backbone. Right after that, I had the pleasure of teaching someone promises who had been working with JavaScript for about 2 weeks. So I tried to tell him pump his brakes, he did not listen, so I had to go through and explain kind of how they were working. It really helped me. I think the biggest thing about promises, even though they are objects, it helped me understand how the code works better and how it kind of flows through a system. And the last and most important reason you should listen to me, I have a PowerPoint and I'm at the front of the room. No? Fine. So, why promises? I promise this won't be too long. This is the actual definition by MDM. Promise is an object representing an eventual completion or failure of asynchronous operations. Essentially, a promise is a returned object which you can attach callbacks instead of passing callbacks into a function. You know, kind of, we're gonna say I say greenhorn. I don't like the word rookie, it makes you sound too, greenhorn sounds like you're going somewhere, you're just kind of grabbing your colors. Basically, it's an object that is returned in a function call, and then you can start playing with it if it's successful or fails. With that object, you can attach a callback, which I find kind of funny because promises came about to clean up callbacks, yet you know they're still very kind of an integral part of promises. And please, if you have any questions, like feel free to ask. I'm winging this. Here's, I'm going to pull this up in some code so you can kind of see it work.
There's a question over here.
Sorry.
Yeah. What's callback again?
A callback is when you pass a function into a function. You have something that needs some data later on.
Yeah.
And you typically run it.
You set up a function way up here, and then finally the data gets there, and you pass it in.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, and promises came out in ES6. It just helped get out of the callback hell. I know there is something new. The new cool kid on the block is async await, but it's actually async await is promises. So if you can grasp promises, you'll have async await down very well. It just cleans up everything. So these are a few of the methods you will see with promises. I wouldn't say you're not really going to use them a lot. I've used Promise.all once, and that was because I had a few functions that were running asynchronously that I wanted all the data back in the beginning. I'm going to switch over to VS Code and kind of show you Promise.all real quick. How's everybody doing on this rainy Tuesday?
Good.
Good? Wet.
It is the perfect weather for an indoor meetup.
So this is where Promise.all comes in. I'm going to have to come, what?
Pump up your phone.
Okay.
Thank you.
I need to come back. When I say Promise.all returns an object, it's actually part of promises that makes it kind of powerful. Promise, how I have it in Prom 3 right here, promise is constructor. So it builds you an object with your data that you're returning. So you'll see this a lot when you're building promises. There is things that are going to return back as it is. But say you have a few promises, you need all the data to work with something, and enter this real quick so we can kind of explain it. So coming through, this is your first thing. Your Promise.all actually returns that object. It gives you everything that you need. It's saying, hey, I'm ready, I see what you gave me, I'm working on it. As soon as I get everything, we're going to go through it. And I actually set this up with the set timeout. Playing with set timeouts does get a little funky with promises because they always run last, or they run towards the end of the call stack. I can't remember.
It
Kind of depends.
You can't depend on the time.
Yes.
Because it's based on the call stack.
Mm-hmm.
So does that mean it returns an array or an object, or what does it return?
So that's where, so Promise.all, how it works, you actually pass multiple promises in an array. So it is an object, it's an array inside an object. So in Promise.all, all of these, with the call stack, Promise.1 got fulfilled, Promise.2 is just the number, Promise.3 had the set timeout, and I will explain Fetch a little bit more, but it goes to an outside website to grab the data. Basically with Promise.all, even though 2 of these are done, it's going to wait until all 4 promises are done, and then it's going to return them all at you. So the answer to life and all the questions in it is 42, checkers, and then there's another array with this fetch. So fetch works on promises, so it's actually a good example for going out and getting it if you had a really, with that. So that's all. I'm going to show you the other one that I have not actually.
Before you move on, ask if there are any other questions.
Sorry. Questions, please.
For that.
All right. So this is the other method that does end up, you will end up seeing. It's called Promise.race, and I'm gonna actually, yeah. So where Promise.all waits for Promise 1, Promise 2, Promise 3, and Promise 4 to all get returned, Promise.race is you're waiting, the first one that comes back is going to give you the answer to that. So how we have it here, this will be Promise 1. Actually, I'm going to change something up real quick. One second. Basically, Promise.race does exactly what it says. It's a first one to win is the first one that gets printed out. With this one right here, I guess question, and I know I'm going to ask this. So out of all 4 of these, which value is going to get logged first? Prom 2?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
So we got bunch for 2, 1 for 1. So it's Promise 1. So it was a good thought with Promise 2, but because of how I have this set up as Promise Resolve, that is basically saying finish this out right away. So if we set this into a new Promise Resolve Reject, it still would do the exact same thing because as it reads the code, it's going to return it right away. With the promise, those are kind of the 2 methods. I wanted to go over them really quickly that you will see, but you're not going to see that often. Sorry.
Why would you need to use Promise.race?
Sorry, what?
What's the use case for Promise.race?
Kind of want to, I can't think of any use cases. I haven't used it.
You might have multiple sources, and it doesn't matter which one gives you the information, you just need the information. There's another one coming out soon.
Yeah. For example, like on a web page, if you're hitting multiple APIs, you don't care which, like if you have a graph or a stock ticker and then you have other information, you don't care what goes first.
No.
Gotcha.
I was thinking, you know, pulling multiple news sources would be another one. You just want a news source up. So, and that it's a small use case, but it is useful in scenarios. So, and I should have went over this first, and I realized it, and when I say I'm really busy, I really do mean that. There's two things that absolutely happen with every promise. A promise is either resolved, means you get your answer and you get the object back, or rejected, which is not as sweet, but the cool thing with actually both of these is you can call .then. So whatever you get back from a resolved or a rejected, you have access to it and you can play with it. A lot of the times with reject, you're going to get an error, you're going to want to log / do something else. So it's very useful that both of these have a .then on the end, because you can, no matter what happens, you can work with the data that's coming back to you. So, but wait, what does .then mean? Simple, my dear Watsons. .then is fired when the promise gets rejected or resolved. Most of the time, the initial promise is fulfilled, but when that's used, it's when the promise is fulfilled, but you can use it as rejected as well. So I was going to say, tell your neighbors, .then is what you do with the goodies you get back from a promise. Even then, most docs will list that errors or rejections get handled with a .catch. .catch, you're going to see that a lot with tries, catches, and whatnot. This is actually something I did not know out of here. .catch is basically this last line right here. So you're doing a .then, it's just kind of syntactically sugared. There's not a lot, from what I've read, there's not a lot more with that. So one other thing, and when I say this helped me learn how code flows, I know I'm all over the place with this. It actually, I could start understanding call stack a little bit better, which ends up being a big part of JavaScript. Please, I want to say, do feel free to ask questions. Call stack gets very confusing. Basically, the 30,000 foot view, and this helps with seeing promises and kind of how they function. You do need to know call stack. Is JavaScript will read the code top to bottom, it parses it one time through, and then it goes through there and it will start jumping around doing all your calls. But it gets everything. So it reads top to bottom one time and then it goes back through and does what you need it to. So I'm going to come back to here. We're going to go over the .then and the kind of .catch. I think this is, yeah. So, going off on that, somebody, I know what's going on. I want to hear somebody kind of walk this through, how I have this written, like what's going to get logged, how everything's going to get logged, what's going to get logged. Like, are we going to see, so after the initial, what's going to happen?
So after the initial, you've got a timeout. You're going to resolve your promise, and you're going to alert promise fulfilled. That's going to wait 5 seconds. Then you've got a .then. You have some errors going, and then you're going to your console won't want to do this because it error, I believe. And then, yeah, I don't know. I've never used error.
No, it's all good. Like,
Yeah.
I'm here to help. I want to walk you through this. So you were right to about here. So with this, it does run through the promise is resolved. Then once that finishes, you're going to get the alert, like you said. Then that throws the error, which sends it into the catch. The then null, which actually, so you said it would console log do this. It's not going to do that. It actually skips the rest of it. And it comes down to this catch and does that. So this is another really powerful thing about promises as well. You can do a .then, a .then, a .then, .then. So I'm going to run this. We'll get the alert here in a second, I hope. So right here, and this is where promises threw me off a lot, is when you get these errors, or it does not get when it gets rejected. Anything below an error in that code block, it just skips over and throws it right into a catch. So right here, as it comes down to here and does the catch. With that, how JavaScript parses this as well and reads this is if we moved this do this above this error, it would do as you say, console log do this, then do that. So it shows you a line of kind of how everything goes. And as I said, I was working with media, and this is where I really needed to use this. And I'm going to clear this out real quick, and don't ever do this. This is my own bad. But this is where promises kind of, you're going to see it. Don't do this on your computer. It's deprecated. You'll never use it. But I found it out last night, so it's kind of funny, so I like playing with it. If you're using Chrome, you're more than welcome to follow along. You can see all this cool stuff about your battery. So your Navigator gives you access to a lot on your computer. When I was using Navigator, I was using it to get the media so I could have my camera screen pop up. I wanted to have it so I could show you a video on it, but time bit me in the butt as much. So with that, you can get audio as well, which is really nice. It's how you grab access to your camera and your audio. I will show this real quick. No, there's one more thing. Actually, yeah. So you can do this on your own. In Chrome, it works in all browsers. If you do the get user media, it will return you a promise, and it's not going to work because they already called Navigator. I don't know why this is working for me. But with this, it gives you a promise, and depending on your computer, if you have a super fast computer, you're not going to notice. Actually, I'd have to find it, and I don't really want to do that right now. But you have an older computer, it's not going to pop up as fast. So you have something like a webcam. This is where Promise audio. If you're pulling audio from YouTube, Promises, they will send that back in their API as well. So this is why it's a useful tool, because if you want to display a video on your website, but you don't know everybody's internet connection, you can still have the JavaScript run. So yeah, that's kind of the big one. And this was something I was trying to go over, and I kind of got a bunch of different definitions on this, so I would like to hear input if I am totally wrong. So where promises and async and await are really different is promises tend to run non-blocking, and async await is more blocking, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I was right on that. And as I mentioned, call stack. This is where blocking and non-blocking on call stack end up being kind of a big thing. So with blocking, if you're using async await, it's going to run through. It's going to run through, and it's going to hit that async await, and anything that is underneath it is not going to stop, but it's going to pause until it gets the information back. With non-blocking, and with this, kind of be careful on it as well, because it can cause, I found an issue. Just 1 second.
When you're saying blocking, like, is that, can you explain that just a little bit?
Sure. So JavaScript runs in like blocks of functions per se. So non-blocking versus blocking, if I am correct on this, is you can't go to the next block in blocking. So it stays within that block.
Okay.
Non-blocking, I wish I had a whiteboard. It's a lot easier.
It's not like code block, it's more like you're going to pause and wait for something to finish, but while you pause, nothing else is happening.
Yeah. When I say I wish I had a whiteboard, it's
there's a whiteboard down there.
I'm going to drag this over. Does this explain blocking? So So this would be like a code block per se, and then another code block and another code block. Blocking, you would have async await here, and it would wait to get the results before moving to this one. So with promises and being non-blocking, say, just for example, I'm going to use this for example. So your promise is in here, or your promise, or sorry, scratch that. Your promise is right here. While you're waiting for the promise, this will get pushed into it will get called off your stack, and then this one will run, and then this one will run, and then your promise will finish and get inserted where you need to. When I say it's very important, like it's nice for slower data, pulling big data packets back, using it along those lines. So it kind of, and yeah, I was just going to get to that, where I was like, I wish I had a board like that. The square example helps out with that a lot.
So like large images versus text or something being called.
Large images, you'd want to do something a lot differently. Just it gets messy with that. But large text, correct.
Async await is really useful when subsequent actions are dependent upon previous actions. So then you can pause until you have the data you need for the subsequent actions. And as much as possible, I try to avoid any of that. You don't want to block unless there's a really good reason to.
And with how fast data is getting passed along and how fast computers are getting, to you in a development area, it's going to be very negligible seeing these differences.
Yeah.
Where you will see these differences is Outpost, someone working on a satellite dish for their internet. If you're kind of remote, that would be a better use case for like getting videos and with a promise and stuff like that, and kind of the non-blocking versus blocking.
Check your Slack real quick.
That was the one I was looking for. I just don't have anywhere to print it out. That's why I was trying to build it up. So,
Thanks for showing.
and when I say like this is where I got my meat and potatoes. User media. You will use it all the time for accessing webcams, accessing microphones. That's one of the big ones I can think of. So, apologize for the little all over the map. Questions? I'd love to talk a little bit more. I think I have some time, right?
You do.
It's kind of neat. I mean,
Yeah, I tried out the battery motor. That was pretty cool.
hold on, the battery one. I was playing with it the other day. It's I found out it's deprecated across the board, so it doesn't work in Firefox. It doesn't work anywhere else. But I thought of some fun stuff you probably could do with that, like only have web pages loaded like 5%, and make sure they kill your battery.
It's probably why it's deprecated.
Yeah.
I mean, from what I saw, it was never in Firefox. Obviously, it was never in Internet Explorer. Google is the only one working with it. So,
Dex, actually, go ahead and check your Slack again. I sent you a proposal promise on all settled.
oh,
And then scroll down, there's a table on there that shows the 4 different types of promises.
forgot about that.
Well, yeah.
So yeah, and I mean, so this is, wow, it's all settled. Didn't they do finally?
So these are the 3 combinations for when you have an array of promises that you're handling.
Yeah. And with the arrays, that's your pump. Basically, you are taking something very asynchronous and trying to make it synchronous. Is where all and race come into play.
So the new one there is all settled. It's not actually out. It's just a proposal, but it's fairly well along. And the idea is all, if any of them are reject, it's automatically rejected. With all settled, it waits for all of them to either resolve or reject before it does anything else.
With all, it's all or none. So you don't get, even though promises do return construct an object that gets back, it's either a failed or a fulfilled. All have to fail or all fulfilled for all the work. Let's say all one more time.
For promise any, is it just, from my understanding, it returns the first promise fulfilled, correct? Is there, like, and, is that correct?
So, I have not seen Promise.any quite yet.
Actually, it's a separate proposal, so if you click on that, you probably go.
It looks like it's the opposite of all settled.
Yeah.
It's just when any one of them is settled. It's like a race, but it doesn't matter which one.
Yeah.
If it's rejected.
So what's the difference between settled and fulfilled? Because that seems to be the key word between the two, and I'm not sure what the...
Settled is you get resolved, you get what you were looking for with your promise, or it's rejected, like an answer comes back. May not be the answer you want. At least how I'm seeing this with any right now. Any is you get the first one that gives you your answer back that you want.
Successful.
Correct.
That makes sense.
Is there, like, a promise where it will return the promises even if one is rejected? Like, it just says this promise is rejected and the others are returned? Or is that going to be like is that going to be like chain promises?
So you would, with that,
What was the question again?
Like, say that 4 promises that he had up,
if the third one,
like one of the 4 is rejected, but we still want the other ones? Like,
Yeah, so that's the all settled.
okay.
yeah. So that one's not quite out yet,
Now
right?
it's stage 3.
Okay. So probably will be coming shortly.
Yeah, you can get it if you're doing any type of compiling with Babel. You can get it at this point. You just need to include it in your
Is
Babel
that like
webpack
ESX
config.
features or?
Yeah, just include stage 3.
Your bleeding edge stuff.
Yeah.
So don't write it for your grandma's computer. It might break. Any more questions? Please, criticisms too, if you feel like it.
What kind of
Man,
questions
you are
do
a
you have in
tough
general?
crowd. You were really trying to put some humor. You were just tough.
Hey, what kind of questions do y'all have in general? What's that?
You're putting us on the spot.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm on the spot. I'm on the spot right here. Please ask. Like,
On the spot would be you up front.
Yeah.
So that's fine.
and you want to come up here? People will pay attention to you too, which is really weird.
Did you have any more slides?
That's it. Last one was.
Those promises relate to generators. We're going through that in our cause. Class.
Ooh.
Because
Generators
those
can
generators
return
are supposed to be
promises.
kind of the predecessor.
They're orthogonal.
I'm sorry, what?
Generate.
They're orthogonal. You can use them together. You can use them separated. They're both not really related.
They're. And I mean,
Different type of control flow or is all.
yeah. I mean, the big thing, and what I find funny with kind of going over this and a lot of stuff, like we're trying to get away from callbacks, but you still kind of end up using them in some way, shape, or form. And then like async await was to clean up a lot of, make it a little cleaner to read promises, but you still end up using a promise, which ends up using a callback. It's just it's a cleaner way to get the code that you need, kind of a high level. So.
Tell us about your interview process with your new job.
Interview process? I was promised a job. Ching. Come on, man, I'm trying. What?
Still waiting for a callback?
Got a callback. And I was not in callback hell. Man, you guys are tough. Yeah, I guess, yeah, really, any more questions? I do, as I said, I got a lot.
You said in the beginning that you didn't pay as much attention to promises as you should have, and then like your first day on the job, basically, that kind of came up, and as I had a pretty similar experience, I just want to maybe hear just anecdotally, like what was the task, just for people that might not have used promises to understand, like if I'm stepping into a job, I got to do something, what is it going to look like?
Actually, you know what? I can actually pull it. I think I might have the code here, so I can give you a real world example. Give me 1 second. I may not have, I don't know if I have access to this data anymore, but this will, I can give, oh, come on.
Can you give us a high level?
Basically, a high level is okay, I can actually get it from here. High level, I needed to, this was an application we were working on for construction management, and for issues they needed to snap a photo and save it to a database. When I say I didn't know anything about promises, like it literally came to, it ended up helping me out a lot in this project because I was able to, here it is. Cool, I can actually get to it and show you. And you get to see my ugly mug. One more time, on a bigger screen. But with this, I needed to access the computer's camera, access the device's camera, which is a Surface, a MacBook Pro, anything like that, and then have it displayed in front of you so you know what you're snapping a photo of, and then grab that data and put it into another file, which a whole bunch more stuff got encoded and put into the database. So when I was trying to do the get user media, and Sean so graciously provided it for me. This is all, and the program that I'm using is actually just Chrome. It's a Chrome-based Electron, or it's an Electron wrapper that is around a web page with Chrome. It's headless, which when I say promises, like with webcams on your computer, you have to ask for permission. So that's why it gives you a promise. It basically says, hey, I'm going to grab this data, but I need some things to happen first. So when you say yes and you give access, that's when you get all the data back. So not a block in the middle, but there's a pause in the middle where they need some, hey, like what are you doing? It actually goes into the computer and asks for permission. So, and yeah. Without and where it actually ended up helping me with how this project was built, panes were actually slid in and out. So with that coming in, I actually had to figure out how to basically take a promise, put it in another promise, and hold it for a second while a pane loaded, and then I pasted the camera, or what the camera grabbed, onto a canvas, and then went from there. Took the photo off there. So that's the best. That was one of the strongest examples I could use for promises kind of right now. YouTube API is the other one.
So it was a promise to access the camera in the first place, because as it showed us in the browser, that returns a promise.
Yep.
But then the promise to create the data that you need to send to the database, and then I'm sure probably also a promise to actually hit the API that will give that file to the database to store it. So
yeah.
Just pretty much promises are super duper important.
Promises on promises on promises.
Yeah. Cool.
And bad promise jokes too. You get a tolerance. So I've played with this API a little bit, and it's cool with the camera. You can actually grab the audio, and there is a way to have your microphone transcribe. I haven't had a lot of luck live with it, and it's been a little sketchy. For some reason, it thinks that I like to cuss a lot, so I was like, I'm not, and I do, but I'm not going to do it in front of all of you. So I didn't go with that, but there is you can grab your camera so you can actually have it transcribed, which I think is actually really important because there's going to be a time where talking to your computer and getting the text that the database needs is going to be very powerful. So, and also for people who are not capable of using a computer like all of us. It's a cool feature, and it's just like something you can look at, but to get that, you need a promise. So, any other questions? I can't talk about this. I signed an NDA. That was about all I can show you of it. And they scrapped it, so we're good. No?
What might be a good way to practice using promises? Like if there's something simple you can think of?
Actually did 2 APIs I just spoke of. Those are really good ones on your local computer. The big one that I can think of playing with is the YouTube. YouTube returns a promise as well. So
you could like make an app that says like request user's camera and then try to post the YouTube video to that user's like YouTube page using those promises? Or would you have to like get their authentication?
That
Google?
you would have to play with authentication, but kind of a live stream would work very similar to that.
Could you show us from your example where you were making that actual fetch request that was returning real data? Because that is probably one of the easier applications.
Man, I gotta think of where it is.
Did you close another? Sorry. Put me on the spot. What was that data? Maybe you could just...
The data that I was using?
Yeah, you made an actual fetch request, right? A real one?
Oh, the fetch in the console log?
Yeah.
That was a type, JSON placeholder.type code. And
So that wasn't an actual request?
no, it wasn't an actual request. There was just...
You guys, your console just...
So this is actually where I was getting it. And if you were, I should have went on this a little bit more. This is actually a good example. Like all of these on this fast internet would return at the same time, but somebody who's on a little bit slower internet or something throttled, this 10 would return really fast, but the 5,000 would take forever. And this is where a promise this is where the power of a promise comes into play.
Actually, on this network, you could probably be slow. Scroll up just a hair bit right there.
I think that's actually one of them.
Yeah.
So
I think that might be something to play with in terms of...
this is another good one. Yeah. I think the camera is just fun because you're like, hey, it's my face. Ah.
Do you know of a good tutorial on promises as well? Or what you would recommend?
Yeah.
MDM page pretty good, Sean. That's my guess.
The MDM page is at least looking through it, because I've been in it a lot lately, I liked how it worked. For a follow along, there's plenty of stuff out there. During our break, I'll find something and I'll put it in Slack. There's one that I was working with. He actually shows goes through callbacks and promises in async await, so you can kind of see how the progression grows and how they interact with each other. And I will find that video. Thank you for asking questions. I know it's promises. It's a weird thing to talk about because when you get to them, you're going to be like, oh, I get this. And then you have to explain it to someone. You're like, I don't get this. When you have to explain it to everybody, it's a lot of fun. So, and I will also I'll see if I can find some better, or some like real live code along with promises so you can kind of see how they work, where you get an example out at the end. Any last questions? That guy wants to clap, so we're clapping.